The British Isle that we'll visit today holds 1,001 treasures hidden away in rolling green landscapes that take the breath away. A mere 12 kilometers away from the neighboring island of Great Britain, our destination is known for its green wilderness, its steep cliffs, and its crystalline waters. The land is steeped in Celtic myths and legends, in which elves and fairies figure prominently. Although it's also known for being a land of migration and poverty, Ireland's still proud of its traditions and receives visitors with open arms. Our trip will start in Dublin, the nation's capital. From there, we'll head to Galway, a bustling town situated in the wild fens of the province of Connaught, and then on to Cork, the second largest city in the country. As we go, we'll visit castles, a few pubs, and even a distillery. Come join us on our all-inclusive tour to Ireland. Here we are in Dublin, the capital of Ireland. A young, lively, and cosmopolitan city, Dublin has been experiencing an unprecedented boom for the past several years. It's become a full-fledged European metropolis, as well as a beacon of multiculturalism and a powerful economic force. Strolling through the streets, we walk past buildings that are proof of Dublin's glorious past, and we meet the city's inhabitants, who are legendary for their high spirits. And speaking of legends, here we are, welcomed to the city by a leprechaun, a symbol of Irish folklore. Trinity College is Dublin's iconic university, founded in 1592 by Queen Elizabeth I. It's the oldest university in Ireland. While it was long the territory of male Protestant students, the institute started accepting Catholics in 1873. However, women had to wait until 1904 to be accepted as students. More recent buildings are scattered in among ancient structures from the 18th and 19th centuries. Among the more famous students of Trinity College are Oscar Wilde, Samuel Beckett, and Isaac Newton. The high point of our visit to the university is the Old Library, a two-story building that preserves rare and ancient books. Our guide lists off a few titles before we go in. Over 200,000 works are cataloged in the main room, called the Long Room, for its 65-meter length. It's an impressive space filled with sunlight. Our guide leads us to one of the last remaining original copies of the 1916 Proclamation of the Irish Republic. In an adjoining room where cameras aren't permitted, the Book of Kells is on display. Some scholars believe that it's the most beautiful illuminated manuscript in the world. Completed around 800 years AD, it contains the 4 Christian Gospels and 680 magnificently illustrated pages. We leave the library under the watchful eye of the 48 marble busts that line the Long Room, portraits of 48 great writers and thinkers, including this one of Jonathan Swift. We head for St. Patrick's Cathedral, built in honor of the patron saint of Ireland. According to legend, this is where St. Patrick baptized the first Christians in Ireland. Here we find a statue of Benjamin Lee Guinness, a grandson of the original brewer, who invested in the cathedral's renovation. The Gothic-style building dates back to 1220. Walking around the neighborhood, we come across Windmill Lane Studios, famous for its work with Irish rock band U2. The studios have been moved, but the place is still a magnet for fans and tourists who come to leave their mark. In the city center, Dublin Castle is a magnificent 13th century fortress. The Record Tower, erected in 1258, is the oldest structure on the site. The rest of the castle has evolved over the course of centuries and has been repeatedly damaged by fire. The castle is a beautiful ancient landmark, but it also plays an active role in contemporary Irish politics. It's used for political ceremonies and hosting heads of state from all over Europe. During our stay in Dublin, we were at the Ibis Hotel, a modern establishment with 150 rooms. We'll leave it behind today to start our bus tour across Ireland. Under grey skies, we start our journey that will bring us to Athlone, Clonmacnoise and Ballinasloe. Athlone is a charming little town built right on the River Shannon. Its economy is closely tied to fishing and tourism, and it dances to the beat of the Irish music that is energetically played in the streets and pubs by local musicians. We'll stop and have lunch on the banks of the river at a restaurant called Olive Grove. It's a beautiful place to eat, and the cooks really know how to showcase their local meats and cheeses. Satiated, we head toward Clonmacnoise. The Clonmacnoise Monastery is steeped in Irish history. On the site are the ruins of one cathedral, 8 churches, and 2 round towers. These buildings were constructed between the 10th and 12th centuries. Clonmacnoise was founded in the year 545 when a priest built a wooden church on the spot to peacefully contemplate the view of the River Shannon. Over the centuries, the buildings around the church multiplied, eventually forming a little hamlet where priests and disciples devoted themselves to learning and teaching Christian texts, the Irish language, and general knowledge of the period. Clonmacnoise was a precursor to the modern university. Our guide shows us 3 magnificent Celtic crosses and numerous Christian tombstones, including those of a few Irish kings. The largest is the Cross of the Scriptures, which is richly decorated with carvings of biblical scenes. The high crosses of Ireland were erected to bring prestige to a monastery or to an individual patron. Although a visit to Clonmacnoise is usually associated with honoring the past, some choose it as a place to celebrate the future. We continue on our way, heading into the neighboring county. We arrive at the Carlton Shearwater Hotel, a 4-star establishment that promises a comfortable and peaceful night to all its guests. Our guide makes sure that everyone has a room, and then we head up to drop off our bags. We'll have the chance to relax in our rooms later on. For now, the skies are clear, and we have the rest of the day to explore Ballinasloe. We step into Maud Miller's Pub, a popular gathering place in town. Here, the selection of beer on tap holds pride of place. The famous brown Guinness flows abundantly. A group of local musicians sets the ambiance. It's almost like our own corner pub, except for the fact that we're in Ireland. And off we go for another day exploring Ireland. After a stop in Galway, we'll head in the direction of Kylemore Abbey. As we cross the country, our guide tells us about agriculture in Ireland. Livestock, especially sheep and cows, accounts for 80% of all farming income. Barley, sugar beets, and hops have replaced the more traditional buckwheat, oats, and potatoes in the fields. Here we are in Galway, the westernmost city in Ireland. While it's home to over 250,000 residents because of its informal feel and bohemian style, Galway feels like a big village.
côté, Joseph Kennedy.
The fountain of Ayr Square represents the sails of a Galway hooker, a traditional fishing boat that is typical of the region. Built in 1984, it underlines the importance of maritime activity in the community. The brown doorway is all that remains of a merchant house from the 17th century. It's preserved in honor of the founders of Galway, the Brown and Lynch families. The Ayr Square Centre is a perfectly ordinary shopping mall with one eye-popping difference: the medieval wall that has been incorporated into the modern structure. Our guide tells us that the wall was built in the 13th century to protect the Norman invaders from the local Irish population. After many years of neglect, the wall has been given another life, preserved within the shopping mall, with a guard tower on either side. Back outside, our guide leads us through the streets of Galway. Many ancient buildings bear witness to Galway's rich past, and yet in other ways, the city is thoroughly modern. A statue adorns the front of a building called the Ard Rí House. In Gaelic, Ard Rí means High King, indicating the ruler of the Celtic kings. This building, once the castle of the great Lynch family, has today been transformed into a bank. We walk up Shop Street, a pedestrian thoroughfare filled with shops and boutiques, as its name suggests, but also a favorite among Galway's numerous musicians. After a bit of window shopping, we're happy to take a little break. And why not break next to one of the greatest Irish authors in history? On Shop Street, two statues depict a conversation between Irish writer Oscar Wilde and his Estonian contemporary Edward Vilde. In fact, the two men never met, despite their similarities in name, occupation, and period. Back in Ayr Square, we learn the history behind its official name, which was changed in 1965. After a visit from John F. Kennedy in 1963, the square was renamed Kennedy Memorial Park. Close to O'Brien's Bridge, not far from a hydroelectric dam, this is an ideal location for fishing in the River Corrib. But we'll leave it behind and head for the Galway Cathedral, inaugurated quite recently in 1965. We admire its magnificent wood ceiling, its thick stone walls, its mosaics, and its immense stained glass windows. Sheltered from the rain, we head for the Kylemore Abbey. It's a Victorian-style property including a manor, a tiny cathedral, and garden stretching over 3 hectares on the banks of the Lake Pollacapool. The imposing castle was built in 1868 by Mitchell Henry, a rich manufacturer. He lived there with his wife, Margaret, and their 9 children. Their happiness was short-lived, however, as Margaret died 6 years later at the tender age of 45. Mad with grief, Mitchell Henry decided to transform the estate into a tribute to his deceased wife. Our visit begins in the manor, where we're shown around by a specialized guide from the site.
Donc l'architecte utilisé pour l'église gothique, pour le mausolée et pour le château est toujours le même. C'est James Franklin Fuller, qui est irlandais. Et vous avez ensuite un ingénieur pour le château qui est Samuel Usher Roberts.
After the Henrys, Kylemore went through a succession of owners until a religious order purchased the castle and grounds in 1920. The Benedictine nuns still occupy the castle. This is why the site is now called Kylemore Abbey. Under the steady gaze of Margaret Henry herself, we visit the manor, which has been restored in the original Victorian style. In the richly decorated reception rooms, we can easily imagine the opulent balls given to entertain the high society. 4 of the 66 rooms in the manor are open to the public. The rest are occupied by the nuns' private apartments. But the interior is exquisite, and we admire the beauty of the furnishings and carpets, as well as the tableware on display. Some of the rooms have been modified to accommodate the nuns. Here, a living room has been transformed into a chapel, but the spirit of the Henrys has been respected throughout the renovations made by the Benedictine order. A little way behind the castle is the miniature cathedral, a true marvel of Gothic architecture. Restored and open to the public, this church was built in memory of Margaret Henry. The splendid structure inspires an attitude of peace and contemplation in its visitors. While Gothic churches are usually known for their austere architecture and their gargoyles, Mitchell Henry opted for a luminous feminine style with angels, flowers, and birds instead of monstrous gargoyles. A large window illustrates the 5 feminine virtues of the deceased wife: courage, faith, charity, hope, and chastity. On the bus heading back to Ballinasloe, we come across a few soggy sheep next to the River Suck. We take the time to stop on the Atlantic coast before heading back inland for a night in Ballinasloe. After a second night at the Carlton Shearwater Hotel, we're ready to take off in search of adventure. With its excellent, accommodating staff, the hotel definitely delivered on its promise to be a restful haven. A few of us even did a few laps in the indoor pool. And so we're in great shape as we go off to see the cliffs of Moher and the villages of Bunratty and Adair. The cliffs of Moher are quite simply magnificent, some of the most beautiful in Ireland. They attract tourists from all over the world who come to gape at their stupendous beauty. Footpaths take us along the coast, giving us breathtaking views of these exceptional geological formations. The cliffs stretch along the coast for 8 kilometers, rising to heights of 215 meters. The black rock face eloquently illustrates the sea's erosive power, falling vertically into the depths of the Atlantic. The sheer drop is dizzying. The panoramic view overlooking the ocean is truly awe-inspiring. A footpath brings us to O'Brien's Tower, which dominates the landscape. As it is situated on the highest point in the area, it's a perfect place to take a few pictures. And now it's time to leave the Atlantic coast behind and head inland to County Clare. Just outside the town of Newmarket-on-Fergus stands an authentic medieval castle. Bunratty Castle transports us back to the Irish Middle Ages. Built right next to the River Shannon, it's composed of a 3-story rectangular tower surrounded by 4 crenellated turrets, each one 6 stories high. Inside, each room is sumptuously decorated with furnishings dating from the 14th century. Although the first fortress on the site was several centuries older, the one that we visit today was built by the McNamara clan in the 1400s. The castle guide invites us to take note of the original detailing in each restored room. For example, in the bedchamber, there are perfectly preserved articles of clothing. And the Great Hall still holds the original banqueting tables. Right next door is the Bunratty Folk Park, a 19th century village that's been completely reconstructed according to the standards of the period. Walking through the tree-lined avenues, we visit the farm, the forge, and the rustic homes of the inhabitants, both rich and poor. And then we go off to County Limerick to discover the village of Adare. Renowned as one of Ireland's prettiest villages, Adare has been given the nickname of the English Village since it was reconstructed in 1840. At the time, the city was designed with long streets, colorful facades, and alternating tile and thatched roofs, like in villages in England. The Holy Trinity Church, erected in the 13th century, was once a Trinitarian abbey. Along with their religious tasks, the Trinitarians worked to free Christian prisoners captured during the Crusades. After the Reformation, the abbey fell into ruin, but today the vestiges have been converted into a Catholic church. At the end of the day, we're back on the Atlantic Ocean in the village of Ballyhigh, where we'll spend the night. We take advantage of the lovely weather to stroll on the sandy beach, just in time to take in the sunset. When we wake, we're thrilled to see the sun shining down on another beautiful day. We get ready to leave the White Sands Hotel, an incomparably comfortable and welcoming 81-room establishment. All aboard, we're leaving Ballyhigh to explore the rest of County Kerry. More precisely, we'll follow a route called the Ring of Kerry, which is reputed to have the best views in all of Ireland. In the blink of an eye, here we are. The Ring of Kerry is a 180-kilometer coastal route situated between the highest mountains in Ireland and the Atlantic coast. As we tour around the Iveragh Peninsula, we notice all sorts of contrasts that County Kerry has to offer. We're surrounded by cliffs and valleys, lakes and rivers, each one more beautiful than the last, filling our gaze with every imaginable shade of blue and green. With unparalleled panoramic views of the Irish mountains and coast, this scenic route is truly worth the detour. During the tour, we pass through many tiny villages that live at a pace that reflects the ocean's influence, with the inhabitants making their living from fishing and tourism. One of these is the village of Sneem, where we'll stop for a short visit. We'll walk over to the monument that was erected in honor of Charles de Gaulle. It's a tribute from Sneem to the President of France, who visited the village on numerous occasions. The main street in Sneem is lined with colorful shops and welcoming signs. Pubs and restaurants serving Irish food abound. In addition to its excellent dining opportunities, Sneem is reputed for its wide selection of traditional music. It's a great place to start a collection. Leaving the charm of Sneem behind, our next stop will be in Ladies View. This magnificent site overlooking the lakes of Killarney is called Ladies View in reference to Queen Victoria. She was so impressed by the exceptional landscapes in the area that she ordered her carriage to stop so that her ladies could get out and admire the view with her. The landscape is green and wild, so very typical of Ireland. We continue our tour of the Ring of Kerry through Killarney National Park. We arrive at Muckross House, famous for its sprawling gardens. Situated on the lake of the same name, Muckross House was built in the Tudor style. In 1850, once the manor was completed, the owners decided to design adjoining gardens that would be so magnificent as to be unequaled in County Kerry. As it's located in a national park, entrance is free. Locals in the area come here on nice days to walk or lounge about on the grassy lawns. The garden was completely redesigned in preparation for Queen Victoria's visit in 1861. It was transformed into a true English garden reflecting the fashion of the period, with a touch of wilderness and a focus on imitating nature. In addition to its numerous ancient and rare tree species, the gardens are especially known for their collection of rhododendrons, hybrids, and azaleas. Behind the manor, a rock garden tucked under an evergreen grove is a perfect finish to our visit. This morning, we're leaving County Kerry and heading for County Cork, the southernmost county in Ireland. We'll visit Ardfert, Macroom, and the Blarney Castle. Ardfert is especially known for the ruins of its imposing cathedral right in the middle of the village. Founded by Saint Brendan in the 6th century, the cathedral was used until the 17th century when it was burned so badly that it couldn't be repaired. It has been preserved in this state as an Irish national monument. To the northwest of the cathedral are two small 15th century churches, also open to the public. The Anglo-Norman architecture of the cathedral has lasted through the ages, immortalized in stone. Our guide invites us to walk through the ancient shell of the cathedral with the sky open above us. And then we're off, direction Macroom. Macroom is a small town located halfway in between the cities of Cork and Killarney. It was once a gathering place for the Druids of Ireland, but no traces are left from that long ago period. Not far from the town hall stands a monument in memory of the heavy losses Macroom suffered during the Irish famine. The disaster resulted in many deaths and mass migration. These days, this is where the farmers in the area come to sell their fresh produce. We'll stop for a snack. The River Salon flows tranquilly in the shadow of the tower of Macroom Castle. The square tower and a few walls are the only parts of the castle still standing. An old cemetery and chapel sit quietly beside it. We don't have to go far before arriving at our next destination, Blarney Castle. Almost 600 years old, it is surrounded by dense green wilderness. A 10-minute walk along the path on the banks of the River Martin brings us to the castle. The imposing Blarney Castle plunges us immediately into a fascinating and mysterious medieval universe. The rooms and hallways are a true labyrinth, and the darkness of the interior transports visitors to another era. 100 winding stairs lead us to the ramparts at the top of the castle, from which we can see the surrounding woodland. Exploring the ruins, we can see the extent to which nature has reclaimed the ancient fortress and the surrounding guard towers. And then it's time to change pace, moving from old gray stones to smooth amber liquor. The Middleton Distillery is the largest whiskey distillery in Ireland, site of production of the famous Jameson whiskey. The Murphy brothers established the distillery within the walls of an old wool mill in 1825. A century and a half later, a modern distillery was added to the complex. Today, Middleton produces 19 million liters of whiskey annually. The old distillery has been converted into a museum, which we'll visit accompanied by an official Jameson guide. We start in the main courtyard, where farmers would come to deliver tons of barley each fall. More than half of the buildings on the site were used for barley storage. We pass the massive iron water wheel as we head inside to look at the machine room. These are copper stills used in the distillation process. What makes Irish whiskey different is that it's distilled 3 times, producing a particularly pure alcohol that must then mature for at least 3 years in oak casks before it can be called whiskey. The added plus of a visit to the Middleton Museum is the whiskey tasting session at the end. This is our chance to put our newfound whiskey knowledge to the test. And why deny ourselves when we have a designated driver? We trust him to get us to our next destination, the city of Cork. Cork is the second largest city in Ireland, located in the county of the same name. Cork is first and foremost a port city, and it has repeatedly played a decisive role in Irish history. It was from Cobb, the southern port of Cork, that thousands of Irish people fled the country during the Great Famine in the 1800s. Many of our Irish ancestors departed from here for America. And then, in 1912, a luxury cruise ship made a last stop in Cobb before crossing the Atlantic. This was the last port of call for the fateful maiden voyage of the Titanic. The best way to visit Cork is on foot, following the pedestrian signs, or, if you're lucky like us, following your guide. The picturesque, narrow pedestrian streets are lined with cozy-looking brick and stone buildings. Ahead of us, a church stands at the end of an alley. It's St. Peter and Paul's Church. We continue on our way towards St. Patrick's Street, an essential stop on any trip to Cork. St. Patrick's is a shopping street where we can nose through both international brand boutiques and small local shops. On the banks of the River Lee, the City Hall is sumptuous, and the sculpted detailing of the surrounding buildings rival it for splendor. We'll put our bags down right next to the River Lee. This is where our hotel, the Jury's Inn, is located. In this 3-star hotel, the comfort of the guests is all that counts. And we have some serious relaxing to do because another busy day awaits us tomorrow. We walk to a misty morning view of the St. Patrick's Bridge in the city of Cork. Before heading on our way, we indulge in a hearty breakfast with a buffet offering a wide variety of warm dishes. Excited to continue on with our tour, we wait for our driver in a light drizzle. We load up our bags one last time, and this is the last leg of our Irish adventure. En route towards Dublin, we drive through the counties of Tipperary and Kilkenny. Our first stop is a 1-hour drive away, but it's well worth the trip. Looming atop an imposing rock formation, this is an ideal place to look out over the surrounding region and protect ourselves from any coming invaders. The Rock of Cashel is a group of medieval buildings that overlook the area. The first fortress was built on this site in the 4th century. This construction, called the Castle of Kings, is thought to have been the residence of the region's kings and then later of the High Kings of Ireland. Our guide brings us to St. Patrick's Cross. The great stone slab dates back to the 12th century and is said to heal toothaches. We continue on toward the cathedral, the largest remaining structure of the Rock of Cashel. Erected in the 13th century, the cathedral was built in the shape of a cross. These 3 elongated windows are still in perfect condition, although the roof has been gone for over 260 years. The northern part of the church contains finely detailed medieval tombs from the late Middle Ages. The daylight hits the stone at different angles, giving us some excellent photo opportunities. Almost nothing remains of the church's adjoining castle. However, we learn that a secret passage once connected the nave to the castle. The most important building on the Rock of Cashel, both historically and architecturally, is Cormac's Chapel, built in 1134. Its interior decoration is very sophisticated compared to the other Irish Roman Catholic churches of the period. The finely detailed sarcophagus is probably the tomb of King Cormac himself or his brother. The unusually rich frescoes on the ceiling and walls of the chapel were covered with whitewash during the Reformation in the 16th century, and the workers did such a good job that specialists were unaware of their existence until just 30 years ago. To preserve the chapel while it's being restored, the interior temperature and humidity are closely monitored. The last site of our visit to the Rock of Cashel is the Hall of the Vicar's Choral, built in the 15th century. Restored to exactly how it was in its golden age, the hall is today the site of a museum that exhibits items that have been found on the site that must be protected from the weather. Even the cemetery is worth a walk through. Several high Celtic crosses, astonishingly well preserved, stand in this place of eternal rest. Our heads full of medieval history, we continue on our way under the blue sky. Our tour bus takes us to Kilkenny, a lively city that we'll have the chance to explore after a bite to eat. The dining room of Langton's Hotel teems with activity at lunchtime. Here, Irish comfort food holds the place of honor, including the appetizing baked potatoes with cheddar and bacon. In order to digest it properly, we take a walk through the streets of Kilkenny. The castle can wait. For now, we're in the mood to browse through the small streets of the city centre. Narrow and winding, paved with picturesque ancient stones, the streets of Kilkenny proudly display their history. We come across many small boutiques and welcoming pubs, as well as sumptuous buildings built out of stone, including the town hall. Crossing the River Nore that flows through Kilkenny, we reach St. Canice's Cathedral. Built in the 13th century, its original Gothic style has stood the test of time. St. Canice's is still used as a church. Inside, pale arches draw the eye up to the redwood ceiling. Magnificent stained glass windows illustrate scenes from the life of Christ. The organ, recently renovated, has been playing here for 160 years. The southern transept contains several sculptures in memory of members of the Butler family who have lived in Kilkenny Castle since the 13th century. But it is another church that is truly the pride of the city. The Black Abbey belongs to the Dominican order. With its spectacular stained glass windows, it doesn't seem to suit its nickname of the Black Abbey. The name actually comes from the dark habits worn by the priests to give the Mass. Following the ducks in the river, we arrive at the bridge that will finally bring us to Kilkenny Castle. At 820 years old, this fortress is right in the middle of town and has been inhabited for over 5 centuries by the Butler family. The Anglo-Norman style castle also served as the parliament during the Irish Rebellion in the 17th century and as a recording studio for Mick Jagger. As we head back to the city center, we know that our tour is coming to an end. And so we choose to celebrate it Irish style, in a pub. With one last smooth pint of beer in hand, we are won over by the rhythm of the traditional Irish songs played by a local group of musicians. Our applause is not just for the band, but also for the beauty of our trip and the magic of Ireland. Ireland is a country overflowing with dreamlike landscapes. The country, known as Éire in Gaelic, is a land full of people with a zest for life who preserve their natural history and traditions within their modern customs. Resolutely warm and welcoming, Ireland is a dynamic country with a very rich culture. Falling in love between Dublin and Cork isn't a rare occurrence. We'll raise a glass to Ireland as we look forward to our next joy of touring.